We welcome you all into Studio 12 in the south end zone of Kyle Field. March is just about over. That means it's time to get in another yell and review before we flip the calendar over to April. I'm Will Johnson with Andrew Monaco. Always with us for the yell and review is our Director of Athletics, Ross Bjork. So here we go once more, the March version of the yell and review. First of all, how you doing? And again, thanks for joining us each month with
Doing
these.
Doing great. It's hard to believe the end of March. Like, weren't we just here back in August
and
kicking off the school year? And
once athletic
Right.
events crank up, time flies. The moment they stop,
Yeah.
it gets real hot and the weight gets real slow.
Right,
It's just
That's right. I at the baseball game the other night, I haven't been in town, seems like for the whole month of March, between different conference tournaments and obviously the NCAA tournament, and the people that I sit around, they're like, "Where have you been, Ross? Like, you haven't been." I'm like, "Where have you been?" I'm like, "I've been following the Aggies, out of town. And I haven't been able to be at Bluebell Park." And so but it just seems like it's just flown by. I mean, the month of February with all the different events on campus, I think we had 30 different events over 28 days. And those aren't just games. I mean, we're hosting other events and special events and, shows and conventions and things like that. So just a busy time of year, but glad to be back here at the table, Studio 12.
yeah, nothing wrong with busy.
Absolutely.
Nothing wrong with that at all.
I thought he might be at Augusta.
Hey, we all want to be there
That's,
this weekend and next weekend. We all would love to be
We
at
have
Augusta
some.
National.
We have some folks
Yes, we
going to
do.
support Sam. I'm on that list
Oh,
for
yeah.
later in the week.
Gotcha.
For later in the week.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
That's special.
So it's a neat play, and just we have one signee on the women's side, we have one signee, and then we have a current player playing in the women's Augusta Amateur, I think is what they call it. So that's happening actually yesterday, today, tomorrow through the weekend, and then Sam comes in next week and plays, as a participant in the Masters. So just really neat for our golf programs and exciting across the board. So.
Yeah, we mentioned it on Studio 12 Wednesday that Jenny Park playing at Augusta National right now. You can see it on the Golf Channel.
Right.
And if she makes the finals, you can see it on NBC.
Yeah.
And then obviously Sam with what he'll do next week in the Masters. So, exciting time for both of our golf programs here at Texas A&M. So let's get to the line of questioning because the 12th man has certainly responded. Remember, you can always submit a question for Ross at 12thman.com/askross. You can do so on the official website of Texas A&M Athletics. And we've got to kick off with Wichita, Kansas. Your
my
home
state.
state.
Absolutely.
And,
coming in from Kansas.
That's right.
We like it.
Quick and to the point is Casey Koch. Any news on our Adidas partnership?
Yes, actually, this has been in the news for some time. We have not signed the final contract yet, but we did reach terms with Adidas last summer on a new 5-year term that started July 1st of 2022 and runs through June 30th of 2027. So a new 5-year extension with Adidas. And Adidas, they've been really a great partner in many ways, not only just the amount of product, the cash sponsorship, but just trying to be creative in many ways. And sometimes there's challenges, and we've had, sort of COVID impacts and supply chains, and, everybody wanted the core uniforms to be front and center, in a retail shop. Those things take time, and so it's never perfect in the apparel industry, especially given the supply chain issues. But Adidas has been a great partner, and we're glad and proud to extend with them, and we'll see what happens over the next 4 years now, since we're almost at the end of the first year of that new 5-year term.
How much do they like having Texas A&M and the national brand of A&M tied in with Adidas?
Really, in the state of Texas, I mean, we are their premier partner, both college, pro, everything. And so having 30 million people, having our large former student base that they can market to, I mean, we're really one of their flagship properties in not only in college athletics but in sports. So they love the footprint, and then being in the SEC, having the largest reach within the SEC puts them in a great position. And so that was really the apparel industry is actually being compressed. It's really only two players. It's Nike and Adidas. Under Armour has really backed out of the collegiate apparel space in terms of new agreements.
Yeah.
They canceled some contracts out on the West Coast, and so it's really Nike and Adidas. And so Adidas views us as a way to have great, market impact, and so we'll capitalize on that in a lot of unique ways.
All right, thank you, Casey, getting us started on this edition of the Yell and
Coming
Review.
in from Kansas.
That's
We like
right.
that. Yep.
We've got some out-of-state representation today. Later on, you're going to hear from Maryville, Tennessee, and we had a late submittal on Facebook right there, Andrew, from Maplewood, New Jersey. So that's coming up.
Yeah.
But guess where Sutton Turner's from?
Here we go.
College Station.
Right
The mothership
here.
right here.
Yes, that's right. Right here at the home base.
That's right.
College Station, Texas. Sutton Turner, class of 93. And as usual, as you put it, and I like the word, when Sutton asks a question, there's a lot to unpack before then. There is also sticking with that today.
Right. That's right.
First, Sutton references a Buzz Williams statement made after the Aggies' regular season finale at Reed Arena when they beat Alabama. Buzz mentioned that anything that has to do with votes, Texas A&M is probably not going to be successful. The question asked to Buzz for reference to that was about Wade Taylor potentially being named the SEC Player of the Year, and that's when Buzz made his comment. Anything to do with votes, A&M probably wouldn't be successful. Sutton mentions that last year the Aggies were left out of the NCAA Tournament despite a great year. This year, seeded 7th in the NCAA Tournament despite a year that may have suggested to be seeded higher. He goes back to the 2020 football season when the Aggies went 9-1. They were number 5, needed to be in the top 4 to get in the playoff. Mentions the additions of Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC. But his question here, Ross, after unpacking, is do you feel A&M faces unfair opposition by the press, the SEC, and the NCAA? And if so, can anything be done to change this?
Yeah. To answer the question directly, I would say no. I don't believe that's the case. I don't think anyone sits there in a room or a staff meeting and says, "Hey, we're out to get Texas A&M." I don't think people have conspiracy theories across the board, but look, I've been in a lot of those rooms myself, and so I know how people view our program. I know that we're highly, highly thought of in terms of how we run athletics, how the institution's portrayed, how we fit within the SEC, all the things that we bring to the table. So the short answer is no. I don't think there's any unfair opposition. And I think what you have to do is you have to take each individual situation and stand it on its own merit and say, what happened in this case, right? The people that made the decision around the college football playoff after the 2020, they're not the same people that made the decision around the NCAA basketball tournament, right? And there's different metrics and there's different things so I think you have to take each situation and stand it on its own merit and say, why did this happen? And what can we do in the future to put us in, a better position? And so there's different ways to handle it. Some people just flat out, walk out of a room and pound their fist on a table and yell and scream and, complain and make excuses and things like that. And so I think what has to be done to change, that's his second part of his question, is, we need to control what we can control, and that is being as consistent and as competitive and relevant as possible. And that's on us. Look, we have a job to do. We have to perform and compete. But one of the things about some of the leadership transitions here at A&M is we've gone on these roller coaster rides, right? And it's like, well, we're not satisfied here. Let's change this. Let's change that. And so I think consistency and stability and alignment are key to how we are viewed moving forward. And so we need to be more consistent in how we win and how we perform across the board. We've talked about that openly, that we have to do better. We have to do better. And so we're constantly analyzing. We're constantly evaluating. What do we need to bring to the table? Is it resources? Is it people? Is it strategy? What is it? And so I know that we're highly thought of. I know, but we need to do our part and be consistent. And so you always ask why, what can we do? How do we get better? What is it? But no, I don't think that people are sitting in a room with a whiteboard going, how do we attack Texas A&M? That's just not how it works. And so we have to just continue to march forward. We have to continue to be relevant and pour into our program, and then we have to deliver. We get it. We're in a performance-based business, and we're judged on that. And I just think that we should be and can be more consistent across the board in all of our sports, and that's what we're striving towards every single day.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you, Sutton. Rolling along, Nolan Moore's class of 22 from Orange, Texas. Similar, kind of playing off Sutton. That's why we put him right behind Sutton. But it's a three-part question. I'm going to roll with all of it. You dissect it how you'd like. But if you're an asking Nolan here, this is what he asks. If you're an athletic director in the SEC and you have questions and or disagreements about committee selections in any sport for postseason seeding, what is the process like for an AD to learn more about why those decisions were made? Do those questions go up the chain of command and you get reported back to, or do you hear directly from the decision makers in the committee? So that's two questions, one more to go. How do you take their feedback and more forward to keep pursuing excellence in all we do?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the process to learn more about those decisions, and do you sort of go through the chain of command? I'm assuming he's meaning the SEC, I would assume, when he says chain of command. And then, so it's both. So we have an SEC dialogue with the conference office, and if you take basketball as an example, we have an associate commissioner for basketball, Dan Leibowitz, and Dan is constantly in dialogue with the NCAA basketball committee, with NCAA basketball staff who oversee, the process. So obviously Dan, we're getting inputs from Dan, and then yes, I can talk directly to committee members. You can't. There's no lobbying process during the selection process. I can reach out to them, but you probably won't hear back. And so there's an official channel in terms of making sure that our profile is well understood, and that's through the SEC. And I know that the SEC advocated for our basketball team throughout the whole season because they knew we had a good team. And so that's a process. And then afterwards, yes, I talked to several basketball selection committee members and got their feedback and understood how they viewed it, understood, hey, look, we were squarely in the tournament. There was no question about that versus last year, right?
Right, yeah.
And so you take their feedback and then you say, okay, right now it looks like, based on how they're doing this, it's more metric-based versus the eye test, right? They've gone to all these metrics, and the net, I think, has some flaws in it. And so we're all trying to figure out, how do you sort of work towards a good net ranking? Right now, it looks like if you play a Power 5 team and lose, that's better than playing a mid-tier team and winning. And so you don't want to lose games, but there was commentary from the AD at Clemson talking about an early preseason tournament that they were in, where they won a game and then had to play a lesser-ranked net team, which then hurt them. And he's like, we would have been better off losing that game and then playing a Power 5 team who had a high net ranking and losing that game too. We would have been better off. And so it seems like winning games is not as important, and the eye test is not as important as these metrics. And so we're trying to figure out, is it scheduling? Is it your conference strength of schedule? Is it who you play in the conference? We didn't play Alabama twice. We only played them once. In the regular season.
There's only two teams to beat them, though.
Right. And so, but I'm saying if you play them twice,
right,
you get advantaged by playing a higher net ranked team. We only played Tennessee once.
But when it stops in the conference, when you do play them a second time, and all those things of like you're saying, the net. I don't care where we were in December. I care where we are at the end. And the second place team in the conference, Ross, should not be the fourth seeded team in the tournament. But back to your consistency. 52 wins the last 2 years. Right. In the NCAA tournament now. Where Buzz has this program, helps with that consistency, right? With everybody coming back.
That's exactly right.
And then there's no more ignoring.
Yeah.
Like you take all the excuses away.
Yeah.
And Buzz has said, look, we're going to look at the schedule.
Yeah, that's right.
And see what we have to do.
And we did. We changed 3 games last year.
Yeah.
To put us in a better position, with scheduling. So, you take all that, the last question, how do you take their feedback? You take it and you evaluate it, and if you need to adjust and you think that's the right thing for your program, and then you do that and you make those adjustments. But as far as we communicate with colleagues in all kinds of, like you take baseball. We didn't have to call anybody and complain around the baseball. So that we were the 5th national seed last year, right? Mm-hmm. But we deserved it. We earned our way, into it. And so you take all those things and you just have a dialogue. You can be firm in these conversations for sure, but there's always next.
Yeah.
Like there's always next. And so you've got to make sure that you're putting yourself in the best position where people are educated about your program, and then we got to keep delivering and keep winning. And like you said, now it's like, okay, A&M should be a tournament team every year.
Right.
Buzz has us in position. And so now then it's a matter of, okay, how do you make sure you're seated properly and just keep winning? I mean, that can solve a lot of things, but there's a lot to that, and that's a great question by Nolan.
Yeah, and I was wondering, when you get your feedback, can it even be difficult in regards to this? Committees have changeover.
Mm-hmm.
The College Football Playoff Committee, it's a lot of on and off and changing. And I would think the basketball and the baseball committees, they change quite a bit too.
Yeah.
So you could get some feedback from a group of people.
Right.
Let's say, non-conference schedule is very important to us. So you bolster the schedule. But then with changeover, maybe these are eye test people.
Right, different philosophy. Yeah,
it creates a moving target. Right. Not anybody's fault, just the nature of the beast.
A few years ago, maybe more than a few years ago, it used to be, what'd you do in your last 10 games?
Yeah.
That was a real important factor in the NCAA basketball. Yes. Well, now that's off the table. Mm-hmm. Well, does that mean that, boy, if you're not in a good position by February 1st, can you really earn your way back into a good position? Mm-hmm. Based on that, no, you can't. Mm-hmm. And so that goes back to seeding. Mm-hmm. Look, Tennessee, they didn't have really a great SEC run in the regular season.
They didn't get the double bye.
Right. But in January and February, they were always viewed as kind of a 3 or 4 seed.
Right.
Well, where'd they end up? As a 4 seed.
Right. Yeah.
They didn't change. Mm-hmm. Why is that? So those are all the things that you learn and you try to adapt to.
There's this when it comes to the NCAA tournament. I think they like keeping the mystique, and I think when Buzz called for the transparency, I think it's what'd we hear? Oh, this is such a hard job. I get it. It's a hard job, but it is your job to do that. Mm-hmm. It's hard to go 15-3 in the SEC as well, but that's what the Aggies did.
Right.
And there's this mystique, and I will say, and this is Andrew speaking, they misseeded the entire tournament the last 2 years. But
I mean, if you look at how it played out, for sure
they didn't do well. But
again, we don't have a number 1 seed remaining.
There are 8 teams from the SEC going in spoke to the depth of the conference.
That's right. Yep.
And I think all of that stuff that happened should have helped A&M more.
Yeah.
Where I am the glass half full guy, you're going to allow this basketball team now to have a little more of a chip on their shoulder going forward?
Yeah.
It goes back to your consistency now, right?
Yep. Good stuff there, Nolan. And there's a lot to it, and I think it's a really good dialogue to continue to have.
Yeah. How about that Final Four this weekend? First time ever, is it a top 3 seed is not in the Final Four? It's pretty wild.
Right.
But
and you look at recruiting rankings. I think it's the first time a McDonald's All-American is not in the Final Four since like 1978. I think in the Elite 8 teams of the starters, there was only one true freshman starting in the Elite 8 games, right? And so this is an older college basketball season from a roster standpoint. I mean, so. And that's COVID, and that's transfers, and all those kind of things that play into it. So it's really fascinating to analyze all this.
All right, certainly. Thank you for those topics, Sutton Turner and Nolan Moore. Now we'll head over to Maryville, Tennessee. Keith Harrell is class of '76, and he asks first with his statement. I know there's been speculation about adding sports. I think every Yellen review you get a question about the addition of sports, but. He's going with a different sport this time. I don't think we've heard this one at this point. He said Title IX has a lot to do with that. I was hoping that A&M would add men's and women's lacrosse. He claims, Keith does, it's hockey on grass, and it's exciting and spreading across the country quickly. It's played in the spring and on a football field, so new facilities may not be needed right away. I believe it would greatly boost our athletic department and programs.
So we're reacting to a statement because there's no question.
Actually,
there,
you're right.
Fine, which is fine.
I said he had a
Keith.
statement before he gets to the question, but
which
it's
is
all
fine,
a statement.
Keith. No problem there. And I would agree with what he said. I mean, if you watch, usually I don't watch a whole lot of lacrosse until they get down to the NCAA championships because it's kind of Memorial Weekend, I think, is when they play some of those, and stadiums are packed, and it's a big sport, obviously in the Northeast and more on the East Coast. But I drive into campus sometimes, and the university through Rec Sports is hosting these youth lacrosse games, and there's tournaments, and so there's no doubt that it's growing, and there's a lot that goes into adding sports, like we've talked about on this show many times. You have to look at Title IX, you have to look at finances, you have to look at the interest and ability of our student body, and right now we're in a really healthy spot with all of those metrics that you have to gauge. And then you look at the conference. Right now, on the women's lacrosse side, only Vanderbilt and Florida have lacrosse. No one has a varsity lacrosse men's program at the intercollegiate level. So then you look at, well, who would you compete against? In the state of Texas, I think there might be one intercollegiate women's lacrosse program in the state of Texas. So then it goes down to, okay, the viability of all of that, and who do you play, and how do you match up? And then, but the first thing is Title IX, resources, interest and ability. I don't dispute anything about the popularity of the sport and that it is growing, and that it's fun to watch.
Yeah.
But right now it's not fitting into any plans that we have, and so, like I said, I think we're in a great spot with the sports that we sponsor and who we play against and compete against, and we need to, like I said earlier in the second question, let's win in the sports that we have, right? That's the priority, and then you figure out, what does the future hold.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you, Keith, coming in from Maryville, Tennessee. Now we go down to the Valley here in Texas, Edinburgh. Noah Ybarra, class of 23. He says that the Lone Star Texas A&M logo in the middle of the court at Reed Arena looks so clean and classy. Is there any hope or any talk about the possibility of using that same Lone Star-style A&M logo at the 50-yard line of Kyle Field?
So is this with a bevel or without a bevel? Because, that kind of throws it into a whole other category.
Very good answer.
Right?
Very good answer.
Because the Lone Star logo, it comes with, and I'm wearing it on my lapel, it comes with the bevel tee. Right, so we could throw this really into the ditch if we want to talk about bevels.
We
no,
can
no
really
bevels.
go down a rabbit hole.
Hold on, let me check Facebook as you do
right,
that.
Exactly. Check Twitter. I'm sure Twitter's on fire. Here's the thing about basketball. The surface is different. Other sports, we play all of our sports on natural grass here that have grass. Or have any sort of turf, and so that's I think that's an advantage that we have here at A&M, that we're playing on natural surfaces. So the first thing that I think of when I think of painting fields and markings is we have to have the best grass possible for the players to perform, right? And paint affects growing grass. Paint affects the viability of your grass as it goes longer into the season. We play in our conference on many fields late in the year where they have big markings and big coverages of paint, and you walk out on the field pregame and it's basically painted dirt. I don't think we want that at Kyle Field. And so if you paint a big logo at midfield, the first thing you have to ask is, what does it do to the grass? The more paint you add, the more it affects your playing surface. And so people approach me about, let's paint the end zones maroon. Let's put the Lone Star logo in a big logo at midfield. I talk to our turf experts. Nick does a great job overseeing our turf here for athletics, and I mean, he's like this. No way. Don't paint my grass, Ross, please. And so I'm gonna listen to them.
Yeah.
I love the fact that our field from a marking standpoint is clean and neat.
Yeah.
And it's pristine, and it fits into, now we have the maroon, fence, gate, wall around around Kyle Field, right? It used to be kind of the stone color.
Yes.
We added some logos to it. So we have a maroon wall around our field now. So I think it frames out really well with the grass, with the markings that we do have. And so no plans to do the Lone Star logo at midfield. Maybe paint will evolve. Technology will evolve. Yeah. Maybe that's something we look at down the road. But the first thing that I'm going to ask is, what does it do to the grass and the playability? And the more paint you add, it affects how the field plays. And we want to have the best surface, not only for our team, but just the game is played better when you have a better surface. Yeah. So that's how we look at it. So
yeah, it's a great point, because as you went through that, it kind of made me think, in the end zones, a play ends there.
Right.
Not a lot of action there.
Right.
But if you don't have good field integrity at midfield, that's a lot of action there too.
Right.
I mean, everything's right around midfield in a football game. So you want the proper surface for those guys out there.
Yeah. Which game was the Sam Houston game last year? Didn't we have quite a bit of rain?
Oh, 3 hour delay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it, you saw some puddles starting to form. But what happened when we started playing? There were no issues.
Right.
I mean, our field is phenomenal in terms of the type of surface that we have, and so you mix in a bunch of thick paint, and you don't have that same type of surface if you do have some rain or have some weather. And so we the first thing is we got to protect the playability, and markings and paint are a part of that. So that's how we view it.
All right, we had one more before we get out of here. It was submitted right as we started, I think, on Facebook and through 12thman.com/askross.
And he has a follow-up.
Oh, he's got a follow-up too?
It's going to be a quick
just
one.
Just think, we haven't had any football scheduling questions.
No.
We haven't had any NIL questions.
No.
SEC expansion questions.
Right.
No.
Right.
College football playoff expand. We haven't had any of that.
No.
That's good.
I mean, it was a given you were
not
going to
good.
get the addition of a sport
handle it,
question.
yeah.
I mean, that's kind of built into these at this point.
But those have been some hot topics, and
No
so
doubt.
I'm sure those will come in April.
Yeah, they're just waiting on it.
Sutton's working on his.
Sutton's got the wheels turning. You got him thinking. So let's get this one in. Just came to us over Facebook and 12thman.com/askross. Comes from Maplewood, New Jersey. It's from Nate Kearney. Howdy, Ross. Was wondering if you had any updates to the renovation designs at Bluebell, or when we might be able to see some renderings. He says thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Boy, what a great crowd Tuesday night.
Oh, fantastic.
Obviously the game
right?
game didn't turn out our way, but I think it was the fourth largest crowd in the modern Bluebell Park era. Just a great atmosphere, and it just shows you that yes, we need to do something, and we're working on it. So we actually got Board of Regent approval last November to proceed with the planning. What they call it, a program of requirements, and so we're mapping out what does the project need, what are priorities, how would it lay out. And we're sort of looking at it in really big buckets. What do we do in left field? What do we do in right field? What do we do along the first and third base berms? What do we do to the current seating bowl and the current upper deck? What do we do to the player area? So we're identifying all of those spaces to figure out what we can do. So that process will probably be finished sometime in June, where we have an idea of here's the major concepts. Then you get an architect on board, and you start really honing in on true design and specific design elements. Probably renderings would be sometime in the fall of this year, fall of 23. I'm hopeful that if things go right and we can match funding up with timing, that maybe we can start on some elements in the 2024 year. We don't want to go play somewhere else, so we have to work around the seasons and scheduling and things like that. And so we could have a little bit of disruption, perhaps, but we need to keep playing there. So does that mean you're building stuff in the outfield first, or doing stuff for the players first and not impacting the seating bowl. Those are all the things that we're mapping out right now. So expect more news summer, fall, and into 2024.
All right.
He followed up not with, are we getting a new basketball facility? That was another one we normally
Okay.
get every month, too. Happy MLB opening day. Who did you root for growing up?
So growing up in Kansas, we're kind of in the middle of nowhere in Dodge City. And so this was we were actually closer to Denver, Colorado than Kansas City. But this was pre-Rockies. There was no Colorado Rockies when I was growing up. So it was Kansas City Royals.
Gotcha.
All the way. George Brett. Hero of mine. I love that batting style. I used to try to. I was a right-handed batter.
Yeah.
But I used to try to mimic on the right-handed side the George Brett stance where he would lean back. I mean, just some great names, right? Willie Wilson, Amos Otis,
Frank White. They all came up through that Royals organization.
Go into
Brett Saberhagen.
Yeah.
John Wathen was the catcher.
Yeah.
I mean, U.L. Washington was the shortstop, and
he even golfs with a toothpick. He even golfs with
every
a
game.
Toothpick.
Had a toothpick in his mouth.
Yeah,
One
he
of
was
his
a
first
Royals
stories he ever told upon arriving here is golfing with UL Washington.
UL Washington.
UL Washington,
And I hit the ball, and I missed the green, and it rolled in the middle of an intersection.
Yeah.
And I played it.
Yeah.
But I golf with UL Washington, and he golfs with a toothpick.
We may have to edit this out, but let me tell a quick story. So I was 8 years old, 1980. Go to the Royals game, not quite 8, was still 7. Go to a Royals game, and again, George Brett, hero. Like, that guy was unbelievable, and he was batting 400 that year. And this was like middle of July, and he went 0 for 4 in a game. And outside of Royal Stadium, you knew where the players parked, and there was no secured gate. I mean, the players parked in the parking lot, and they had these tunnels underneath the parking lot, and they would come out to like a stairwell, and everybody knew where George Brett would park. And after the game, you could hang out by his car, and you could get his autograph. Well, he goes 0 for 4, and George Brett, I mean, he had a temper. And he walks out, and, I mean, he's like, "What are you all doing?" He starts just screaming and yelling at. I'm like 7 years old, and he's like cussing everybody out and everything, and "Get out of here, everybody!" And he gets in his car and he peels out. And so, when I'm at Ole Miss, his son, George Brett's son, went to school at Ole Miss, and we had George Brett. We were giving him a tour and everything, and I said, "Hey, can I tell you a story?" And I mean, he put his head down. He was so embarrassed, 40 years later, it's like, "Hey, man, you cussed out a little 7-year-old over an autograph because you went 0 for 4.
Did he give you the autograph at Ole Miss?
He did. He did. Yeah. He signed a football helmet for me, and it was
great.
Yeah. And they won. He was still involved, and they won the World Series. I think what year was that? 2014. They won the World Series, and so we did like a little celebration for him and everything. So I still stay in touch with him. So it's pretty cool, like a childhood hero, even though he cussed us out. That you were able to meet him later on. So huge Kansas City Royals.
You
fan.
cut that out, I'll kill you.
No, that's staying. That's staying,
Yeah.
my man.
Yeah.
The lasting image of him for me is the pine tar incident.
The pine tar incident.
The temper.
I mean, unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, just incredible. Baseball. Obviously it's got some challenges. In the modern era, but the heyday.
Oh man.
That was
I mean,
part of
you
it.
live for Saturday, the game of the week. Right on.
Yes, you did.
ABC, Fox, NBC. I mean, there was the game of the week. I mean,
NBC
baseball was
at
just
that
different,
time.
and so hopefully it can get back to that point. But yeah, glad opening day's here, so should be fun.
Good stuff. Real quick before you go, next time we'll see is going to be late April, but before then, April 15th, maroon and white game and
Big
maroon
weekend.
and white game weekend surrounding it coming up.
Parents weekend, baseball series starting on Thursday night against Missouri. The maroon and white game, 3 o'clock on Saturday. A little bit unique. Again, we talked about construction and all these projects, and we're making great progress on many things, but it's a modified setup. We're going to be kind of 50-yard line in, going towards the north end zone, but the fans will be able to see our players. They'll be able to see, the excitement of Aggie football, and so just a little bit different. We're going to ask for some patience and things like that. It'll be a little bit unique from a watchability standpoint, but the key is, hey, watch the players, support the team, come to campus, come support. We're playing tennis. We have tennis that weekend. again, Parents Weekend, a lot of activity, and then baseball, and then the spring game. So fun times ahead.
All right. We covered it all, guys. Thank you, 12th Man, for your line of questioning today. And remember, you can always submit at 12thman.com/AskRoss. Thanks to our producer, Matt Simon, our director, Sarah Barrera. Also, thanks to Johnny Kerr and Thomas Burns. Thanks to you for joining us again. All right. See everybody out at Bluebell tomorrow night. Also, women's tennis tomorrow with a huge weekend. Friday action against Tennessee and Georgia this weekend. Huge for women's tennis. Softball also has Tennessee this weekend.
That's right.
So
big weekend.
Big one right
here at home.
Right
here
the wristbands. I've got the
There you go.
wristbands.
Just make your way just right through West Campus there. All right. That closes us out on the March edition of the Yellen Review with our AD, Ross Bjork. We will see you in April.